My name is Vincent Yim. I've been a Microsoft employee for about, 15 years now. All this time I've been doing Exchange-related work. In the last 3 years I've been doing Exchange Online. Okay, so enough about myself. I'm going to go ahead and just start presenting because I'm not so great at my own biography. Okay, so this module or this presentation is on troubleshooting hybrid mailflow. It's something I just tossed together in a couple hours. So, it's not going to be a very refined webcast, but hopefully you guys will benefit from the Q&A at the end. First of all, let's go through the agenda. We're going to pretty much talk about the components of hybrid mailflow. We'll describe what it is. We'll see if we can describe the issues, whether or not it's working or not. I've got some examples of non-functional hybrid mailflow. We'll talk about various issues, and then post-migration we'll cover one of the most common questions that people get asked: do we decommission the hybrid server? Without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into what is hybrid mailflow. And if you just, I realize that this is a pretty wordy slide, but just imagine that you've got two distinct Exchange organizations, and mailflow is set up in a manner that treats message flow between the two organizations as a single entity. So basically, you've got mailflow between the two organizations, which is Exchange on-premises and Exchange online, that are essentially mimicking a mailflow in a single environment. So you get some of the same benefits of intra-organizational mailflow, and that is that mailflow is secured. Your rules that do fire, the scope of your rules that fire based on inside or outside the organization do follow the inside of the organization predicates, for example. Also, whenever you have messages sent within the organization, the from field, the headers, they're all treated as authenticated senders. And so essentially, when we've got hybrid mailflow working correctly, the Exchange on-premises organization is considered a part of the Exchange Online tenant, and vice versa. Your Exchange Online tenant is essentially an extension of your Exchange on-premises organization. Because the hybrid mailflow when you run the hybrid configuration wizard, it actually makes some configuration changes in your on-premises Active Directory to support authenticated encrypted mailflow. Essentially, we create an object in Active Directory, which you may have seen if you've done any in-depth troubleshooting. If not, when you run the hybrid configuration wizard, you end up with an object that looks similar to looks similar to this. So if I zoom in here, by the way, can everyone see the shared screen? Just take a quick peek at the, okay, great. So right now I'm just looking at the on-premises Exchange organization, and without the hybrid configuration wizard having been run, if you just run a plain old Exchange on-premises organization with nothing to do with the cloud, you won't see any such object like this. But as soon as you run either the Exchange 2010 or the Exchange 2013 hybrid configuration wizard, you get a general parent object that looks like the following. And so you get to see certain features that are specific to your version of hybrid configuration wizard that is being run. Also, when you run the hybrid configuration wizard, you can configure certain mail flowing options. Like, for example, the mail flow path can be controlled via something we call centralized or decentralized mail transport. And the hybrid configuration wizard object in Active Directory will inherit the settings that you specify in the hybrid configuration wizard. And I'll go through some some diagrams that discuss the various Mailflow paths. But let's go back to the presentation, shall we? So when we do have Hybrid Mailflow working, not only do we have encrypted Mailflow enforced, so that nothing that's in between can intercept the data, we do preserve all of the headers. So any transport rules that you tag messages with will flow back and forth to and from the cloud. We also, if you're using Exchange 2013 as your hybrid server for Mailflow, we have certificate-based security. Actually, we encrypt everything, and we specify the certificate that's expected between on-prem and the cloud. That's to prevent any other Exchange Online organizations from configuring their tenants to to impersonate or send their emails into your on-premises organization as authenticated. And I already talked about this last bullet here. The connectors and any messages obey the configuration settings of the hybrid configuration wizard generated Active Directory object. Actually, if you want to see that same object in Exchange 2010, I actually happen to have, let's go ahead and connect all these three. So you can run Exchange 2010 as the hybrid configuration with server. I'm sorry, as a hybrid server, or Exchange 2013. The same object in Active Directory is created, but the various options are different. This is a completely separate on-premises organization, by the way. And while we wait for this fairly slow virtual machine to start up again, I want to impress upon you that the server that sends mail, your on-premises server that sends mail to your tenant, can be either Exchange 2010 or Exchange 2013. You can have Mailflow coming through several different paths. You can have Exchange 2007 mailboxes or Exchange 2010 mailboxes send mail via your hybrid server to Exchange Online Protection. Exchange Online Protection is the front door gateway to your tenant in the cloud that typically does, anti-spam checks, IP connection checks, and malware filter checks. When Hybrid Mailflow is working, we actually bypass the anti-spam checks, but we do enforce the malware filter. Anyway, once the message hygiene, the limited message hygiene functions are performed, we then deliver the messages to the Exchange Online organizations. By the same token, if you have a cloud mailbox sending to on-premises, the message also must traverse the Exchange Online Protection, or our edge, and it will get processed for outbound malware before it gets delivered to your on-premises users. But because the messages are treated as authenticated, we do also bypass the anti-spam filters. Messages from the internet, of course, going into Exchange Online Protection do have the anti-spam filter or the content filter applied. So in this top diagram, we have your on-premises Exchange server handling Mailflow. In this second diagram, we have an optional edge role. So if you have some organizational policies that dictate that you must not have any internal messaging service sending out mail directly to the internet, then you can deploy an edge server, an Exchange edge role, in your perimeter network and have very limited ports in other words, sending mail between your on-prem Exchange servers to the perimeter edge server to Exchange Online Protection. Now, you're going to see this theme over and over again, that we will have some Exchange role between or communicating directly with Exchange Online Protection. If you do have some third-party devices that do store and forward of email, then Hybrid Mailflow can be broken, and we will talk about these scenarios in the following slides. Anyway, this slide just mentioned how we can have various server roles communicating directly to Exchange Online Protection to establish Hybrid Mailflow. If you have just Exchange 2007 communicating directly with Exchange Online Protection, that is never going to work for Hybrid Mailflow. Well, that can work, but you would need to customize your connectors. In any event, if you have a pure Exchange 2007 organization, you can establish connectivity, Mailflow connectivity with an Exchange Online tenant, but that is never going to be Hybrid Mailflow, because Hybrid Mailflow requires some Exchange 2010 or Exchange 2013 server in your on-premises organization. When you do have the hybrid configuration object created in your Active Directory, your connectors and will obey the settings configured on those connectors and controlled by the remote domain objects and the hybrid configuration wizard object in Active Directory to enforce the encryption and authentication. So here's what it looks like from a connector perspective. In the on-premises environment, we've got two. In a very simplistic scenario, if you've got a single Exchange 2010 or server that where you've run the hybrid configuration wizard, you've got two connectors created. You've got an outbound to Office 365 connector created and an inbound receive connector created. And in the tenant in the cloud, you've got two connectors created as well, and it looks very symmetrical. But and if you look at the on-premises send connector, you'll notice that its address space is customized either based on the recipient domains in the cloud, or if you've configured, or later on you can configure all mail to go to route out through Office 365 rather than directly from your on-premises environment out to the internet. In that case, we can modify your address space of your outbound to Office 365 connector. But the default configuration is for Exchange 2010 will have this configuration. It's important to note that if you run your hybrid configuration wizard from Exchange 2010, you actually will not have this connector from the get-go. That's because your on-premises environment will have the Active Directory objects that correspond with your tenants, so that your existing connectors will actually work for Hybrid Mailflow. So in Exchange 2010, that's the main difference. You'll have 4 connectors created, 2 in the cloud, 2 on-premises. With Exchange 2013, you'll have 2 in the cloud and only 1 send connector created on premises. So hybrid Mailflow path is dictated by how you customize connectors, and your first order of customization is actually upon creation. When you create the connectors with the hybrid configuration wizard, you're going to be presented with an option for decentralized Mailflow or centralized Mailflow. And then you can further customize Mailflow later on if you want to change everything to, for example, route directly to the cloud, then out to the internet. So in the cloud, if you look at the connectors, they would have the outbound connectors don't have an address space tab anymore. That's actually called the scope, the recipient scope, and then you look at the recipient domains object. And actually, I think my slides are a little out of order, but I've got a screenshot of the scope later on. Let's go through some diagrams because pictures can describe this a little better. If we have an external user, they initially you might have your MX record pointed at your on-premises environment. Mail flows from the external senders to your on-premises users, and they'll also send to the cloud. But if you have a hybrid environment where your MX record is pointed on-premises, then the messages still must get delivered first on-premises, and then your Exchange transport services will do its categorization and routing. And in this case, if the message is delivered to Chris in the cloud, then your on-premises servers will send accordingly. Now, if you change your MX record to point to Exchange Online Protection, then the messages will route to Chris directly. But if the external sender puts in the to field an on-premises user, then the Mailflow path works accordingly. The messages route into Exchange Online Protection and then into Exchange Online. The David, in this case, actually has a mail user object, essentially a contact, in the cloud that needs to get resolved to an on-premises mailbox. And once that's resolved, then the Mailflow path will further get directed to the on-premises environment. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to back out one animation and repeat that animation so that we can see the Mailflow path from the external user to David. So again, if you notice that little animation dip, it went from Exchange Online Protection into Exchange Online, and then it went back out to Exchange Online Protection across the outbound connector to the Exchange on-premises environment. I point this out because when you look at the message headers, you'll actually see Exchange Online Protection listed multiple times. And so then this next animation talks about Exchange outbound traffic. In this case, if we have Chris sending out to the internet recipient, if you choose, well, the default hybrid configuration Mailflow path is for Chris to send out directly to the internet recipient. And of course, David, the default option will have that Mailflow path send out from David directly to the internet as well. But later on, you can also customize the connectors to enforce all mail through Exchange Online Protection simply by modifying the address space of your outbound to Office 365 connector with a star. So if we do modify the send connector to that says outbound to Office 365 address space with a star, then in this case, we're directing everything to the cloud, and then Exchange Online Protection will then send out directly to the internet recipient. Now, I've been referring to centralized and decentralized Mailflow, and it's actually an option in the Hybrid Configuration Wizard. One of the questions in the Hybrid Configuration Wizard is whether or not you want to check the checkbox down below for enabling centralized mail transport. By default, it is not checked. Okay, and it's not checked because the most direct and the route that causes the fewest issues is if you have Exchange Online send mail out directly to the internet recipients. But if you do have some compliance requirements that dictate all mail flow from the cloud via on-premises and then back out to the internet, you can check that checkbox, and then when you enable centralized mail flow, then any message that your cloud mailboxes send out to the internet will pass through your on-premises environment. Now, again, the decentralized mail control is with that checkbox unchecked, and Exchange Online sends mail out directly to the internet. And this is actually the most typical and simplest, and therefore the most recommended deployment from most of the consultants out there. But if you do check the checkbox for centralized Mailflow, then the Mailflow path will occur in this manner. In this case, Exchange Online, you can consider it as an island. Any messages in and out of the tenant, out of your Exchange Online tenant, must go through your on-premises environment. So in this case, if your MX record points to your on-premises environment, any internet senders are going to address, if they address your cloud users, actually they won't know if your recipient is in the cloud or in your on-premises environment. All they know is to send to the email domain, and then their mail system does an MX record lookup in DNS, and then the mail gets delivered to your on-premises environment. It's your on-premises Exchange servers that perform the global address lookup as soon as the message passes through your Exchange transport layer. That GAL lookup finds the remote mailbox in the cloud and readdresses the message to cloud mailbox. And if you do point your MX record to Exchange Online protection, or basically to the cloud, to Office 365. But if you do have mail transport configured, then pay attention to the Mailflow path. Obviously, the messages on premises do get delivered, as we described before. But if the internet sender were to send to the cloud mailbox, Chris, in this scenario, the Mailflow path must flow from the on-premises, from Exchange Online Protection to on-premises, and then back out to the cloud. Even if you have an edge server on-premises that whose send connectors have an address space that say send everything that matches the cloud coexistence domain, the edge server must still route on-premises to your internal Exchange servers before it gets readdressed back out to the cloud. So if you pay attention to the Mailflow path in the dotted red, when Chris sends mail out directly to the internet sender, but if you've configured your on-premises connectors to send all mail out through Exchange Online Protection, then the Mailflow path looks like this. When Chris sends mail out to the internet's recipient, it must pass through your on-premises environment. Well, it first must pass through Exchange Online Protection to your on-premises Exchange environment, and then back out to Exchange Online Protection before it gets relayed out to the internet sender. Obviously, we have more hops, and so there's a lot more room for error here. But if you do enough testing and make sure that you don't have any third-party devices that interrupt Mailflow or that block the headers, then you can achieve this Mailflow path. Of course, less is best, but if you do need to change the Mailflow path, then we do recommend that you rerun the Hybrid Configuration Wizard. Also, if you acquire any other additional email domains, and then you need to stamp certain groups of users with that new email domain, or even all users with that email domain name, typically the course of action is you import that and then verify that domain in your tenant, and you would also add that domain as an accepted domain in your on-premises Exchange organization. But that's not enough. To continue making sure that that Mailflow for that new email domain name that you've acquired is treated as internal and authenticated and secured, you will need to rerun the Hybrid Configuration Wizard. If you don't, you can get away with manual configuration, but there's a lot of steps involved in doing so, and because there's the human element involved, we do have a lot of room for error. Also, if you do make manual configuration changes by adding that new email domain name you've acquired into your outbound connector in the cloud, you cannot test immediately. Just like with with many aspects in the cloud, either creating transport rules or making connector modifications, it does take a while for the new changes to replicate throughout, throughout all our various, forests in the cloud, for that new routing rule or path to take effect. So, as an example, if you look at your outbound connector that was in the cloud that was created by your hybrid configuration wizard, and if you go to its properties and modify its scope, this is how you can configure additional recipient domains to get for on-premises. Now, if you have if you've configured centralized mail transport, then you really don't need to do anything because the recipient domains list is going to be asterisk or the wildcard star. But if you've configured the default decentralized mail transport, then your recipient domains list will only include your on-premises domain names, such as, I guess, Contoso or Fabricans of the world. I'm going to go back to this slide because we are going to talk about how Mailflow path works. Okay, so how can we tell if Hybrid Mailflow is working? Well, does the from field show as a resolved address? What we mean by that is, do we see the sender with just the friendly display name and nothing else? If so, then Hybrid Mailflow is typically achieved, and that's the characteristic of an authenticated message from an internal sender. And even though the sender in this case is in a different exchange organization, the fact that you've run the hybrid configuration wizard and incorporated that other exchange organization as a part of your own means that we've configured authenticated Mailflow. And so if the from address shows the from field as a friendly display name, then it essentially is Hybrid Mailflow is achieved. But if you're a cloud recipient and the sender is on premises, in the from field, you actually see the sender's unresolved address. Then in this case, even if you've got your global address list with that sender address in there, if the address is not resolved to a friendly display name, then this is not Hybrid Mailflow. Hybrid Mailflow is broken. Now, most of your users might not care, but there's a lot of other things that that will not work when Hybrid Mailflow is not achieved, and we'll cover those various issues. Another thing you can do is to check the message header. So if you've got a mailbox in the cloud, look for this MS Exchange organization auth as parameter. If it says internal, then Hybrid Mailflow is achieved. If it says anonymous, then Hybrid Mailflow is not working. And so when Hybrid Mailflow is not working, then the content filter in Exchange Online Protection kicks in. When the content filter kicks in, shoot, where's my, okay. So when the content filter kicks in, you can actually have, darn it, you can actually have messages treated as, your messages will be treated as external, and so you might have messages showing up in the junk mail folder now. Sorry for that. That slide's not being cut off. I kind of jumped ahead because typically if you've got connectors misconfigured, or if you're not properly replicating your on-premises objects to the cloud with the right prerequisite domains verified, or if you've got a third-party SMTP gateway that's sitting between your on-premises Exchange servers and Exchange Online Protection, then Hybrid Mailflow is likely going to break. Because it's not authenticated, the transport rules will, any transport rules that where the predicate, the if statement says if the message is coming from inside the organization, those rules will not fire because the messages from your tenant will be deemed as external. Also, if your on-premises users send to the cloud, then EOP will treat them as external, and so the content filter may actually, be more aggressive in, will actually take effect and can cause messages to route into the junk mail folder. Or if you've chosen the EOP option to deliver to the hosted quarantine, then the users will need to log on to the hosted quarantine to access the messages sent from the on-premises users. And that's never a pretty scenario. Jump ahead, so let me go ahead and go back a little bit. You can actually create connectors between on-premises and Exchange Online. You may have actually done this manually before you've actually run the hybrid configuration wizard. Most customers will actually do a test drive of Exchange Online. And they might not actually go full bore into hybrid configuration wizard. These customers may actually, establish partner connectors or on-premises connectors in the tenant that point to the on-premises environment. If you do this, you can achieve secured mailflow and encrypted mailflow, but it is not hybrid mailflow. So there are still some things that can break. In this picture, what we're trying to point out here is that this is not necessarily, even though you use the same components as hybrid mailflow, you do see the inbound connectors and the outbound connectors. The connectors that you create are do not necessarily have the same properties as the inbound and outbound connectors created by the hybrid configuration wizard. Okay, so let's talk about the tools for troubleshooting. First of all, let's go into my lab environment here and take a look at a message that that was sent from on-premises to the cloud, and we do have hybrid configuration or hybrid mailflow working. One of the easiest troubleshooting tools you can enable is to enable the message header analyzer in OWA. So notice here that I am connected to a cloud mailbox. We can see it quite easily by the URL here. It is not an on-premises environment. And so if I look at a message sent from my on-premises user, notice here that I only see his resolved display name. I do not see, and I can actually view his details, and it actually shows the global address list properties. Whereas if this message were from an external user, if I right-click and view details, I don't see all of the on-premises AD attributes. Okay. So again, back to the message from the on-prem user who sends a message to this cloud mailbox that I'm viewing right now. If we enable the message header analyzer OWA app, in addition to seeing the mailflow path, we can see that the sender is on Exchange 2007, and the message routed to an Exchange 2013 server. And then from the Exchange 2013 server, the mail routed to Exchange Online Protection. Let me go ahead and magnify this. Anything that has protection in the header, protection.outlook.com, is the Exchange Edge. Basically, you can imagine it's the Exchange Online Edge that does all the anti-spam, antivirus filtering. But because this is hybrid mailflow, content filtering, doing the spam heuristics and all that good stuff is not performed for this email message. After it passes through EOP, it gets delivered to Exchange Online, and you can tell by the rest of the URLs here. And let's take a look at the other message headers. By the way, if you don't have the OWA app, you can look at Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just reply to this user. Okay. And in contrast, if we have a message that was sent from the cloud user to another cloud user, notice how we don't see any message headers that show the protection.outlook.com string. Okay. So the next question that that I typically get is, how do we enable the OA app so that any user using Outlook web app, as well as Outlook 2013 connected to Exchange Online, how do we enable that add-in? It's not actually a traditional Outlook add-in. If you go to the organization container and then go to, and on the default option under the organization container are the other objects created by the hybrid configuration wizard. In this case, organization sharing allows us to do FreeBSD sharing between the two, between the on-premises Exchange organization and your tenant, so that they're treated as to fake each organization out into thinking it's all one nice happy family. But if we go to the applications option, we can actually add an app from the Office store. In this case, yeah, you know what? Might as well go ahead and click that. Message Header Analyzer is one of many apps that you can add into either on-premises Exchange or your Exchange Online tenant. And so if you choose, in this case, the Message Header Analyzer, hit Add, you will actually see Steve Griffin's OA app in here. Steve Griffin's actually an escalation engineer for Microsoft, so it's not a third party in this case. The user default is actually disabled, but you can make it optional, enable it for everybody. And then once everyone looks at once the recipient looks at the message, either in Outlook or in OA, he will actually consume. He will actually see this this app light up. So if we go down to the MS Exchange Organization SCL, the spam confidence rating is -1. So this is treated as an internal message, just like if you have an on-premises user sending to another on-premises user. Okay. And additionally, because Hybrid Mailflow is working, we have this other header. The Exchange Organization auth as is internal. Okay. Now, what can I do to break Hybrid Mailflow? Yeah, let's see. I guess I'm done with this demonstration, so I can go ahead and tear down my topology now. So in this case, if I were to go back to my on-premises environment and break this lab, let's go to the Exchange Admin Center. And while let's see, okay, great. So I'll sign in. And because these are running on slower virtual machines, it may take a while to so while I wait for that to return, what are some things that we can use to determine whether or not Hybrid Mailflow is working? So a lot of times Mailflow won't work from on-prem to the cloud if you've got a bad transport rule that you may have created either on-premises or the cloud. One of the first things that you can do is to do the message trace. So in this case, let me go ahead and go to the Mailflow tab in my tenant and go to the message trace. And it's important to note that the message tracing capability can be used for near real-time troubleshooting, but it still may take a few minutes for that message to show up. In this case, I have chosen not to specify any senders or recipients. You probably don't want to do this in production because whoops, sorry. Let me go ahead and add a sender. In this case, it will be user 10. Okay, so here we notice that the message shows up twice. Okay, and the reason it shows up twice is because in the on-premises environment, when the sender sent the message, he actually attempted to send it to the coexistence domain object. Now again, the sender sent it to what he knew as the primary domain name, and that is this address that I've got highlighted here. But behind the scenes, because the on-premises environment sees that the cloud recipient is not a true mailbox, instead it's a remote mailbox similar to a contact, the target address, or in this case the external email address, will actually inherit the coexistence domain name. And so if the coexistence domain name is actually not stamped or incorrect, which happens quite often because a lot of customers uncheck that checkbox that's for recipients that say apply this email address policy or apply email addresses based on the email address policies in the organization. If the internet recipient is missing the coexistence domain, then Mailflow is not going to work to the cloud. So that's the first thing you should expect to see. Okay, so if we do validate that the coexistence domain that the message does get delivered to Exchange Online via the coexistence domain, to of course the final address of the mailbox, then we've achieved Hybrid Mailflow. And if we look at the message trace detail, you can actually go to even more details here. Now, I did have some transport rules in the past that broke Hybrid Mailflow, and so let me go back to that message. Actually, it's probably going to be difficult to go back to that message, but I do have a connection to Exchange Online. So I can actually look at the older messages in my tenant. When I run get message trace, it only does a query for the last I believe 48 hours. But I can go back even further. Go back 14 days. And the end date is, we'll query up until now, and we'll see a should see a large number of messages, many of which failed. All right, so in the cloud we don't have queues, but what we can query is on status. So actually, well, anyway, if you look at the messages that failed, let's test 1, 2. No. Oh, of course. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add an external sender, and so in this case, I'm going to type in my Microsoft address and do a search. And we can see here that we've got messages that failed. And if we look at the message reason, message trace can actually tell us why a message failed. In this case, it was rejected by a transport rule. So message tracing is pretty important when in troubleshooting Mailflow. Whoops, let's go ahead and go to this presentation here. Also, you want to look at the non-delivery reports. Oftentimes, though, if you have a rule in the cloud that blocks some messages from Postmaster, then they may actually drop those non-delivery reports from getting out to the internet recipients. So keep that in mind. Also, messages might be dropped due to a virus. That's pretty simple and straightforward. But one of the best things that I typically do is export the message trace history to a CSV file, or you can run. You can have the report with all the detailed summary emailed to you by running the commandlet trace tracking report, message tracking report. On premises, one of the things that you should do is to set protocol logging on your connectors, enable it to verbose, and you want to do it on all of the connectors. And the reason is because when you and the reason is because even though you could get a network capture, you don't actually see whether or not the logic of the certificate thumbprint got validated. So in the on-premises environment, let me go back to Exchange 2013 and go to get-send connector, pipe it to set-send connector. Protocol logging level set to verbose. I realized I might be running out of time soon, so I don't have a protocol log to show you guys. But in the protocol log, you would see the RC 2821 header, the envelope pretty much that says your on-premises connectors are sending out to Exchange Online with the various from and mail from and recipient to fields. But you also get to see the connector logic as far as what the certificate domain is and also what the thumbprint looks like. And that's one way to determine whether or not if the certificate thumbprint matches, or even the certificate name. If the certificate name is off, then hybrid mailflow will not be achieved. Yeah, it might take quite a bit of time. Some other tools for troubleshooting, we've already gone over analyzing the headers. You can use plain old Outlook to analyze the headers simply by going to the properties of the message. And then you would, if you go to the properties of the message, you'll end up seeing something like this. But if you want a prettier view, you do want to either copy and paste these headers into the message header analyzer tool let's see, remote I think was the address. And then if you can go ahead and paste it in here, your message headers, and they'll look exactly like what we had in the OA app. So again, if I open up an Outlook message, go to File, Properties of the Message, copy and paste these headers out, and then bring it back into here. We've got the same headers. So in this case, we see here that the message exited out of Exchange Online. It did traverse through Exchange Online protection, and then it arrived back to Exchange 2013, and then from Exchange 2013 it arrived into Exchange 2007. Okay, and because this message is internal, we also see the Exchange SCL value. Also, I want to point out that we don't see the Exchange organization auth as X header in this case, because the message went in the opposite direction. It went from the cloud to on-premises. But you can see some of the other various headers that show that hybrid mailflow worked. The biggest thing you can do is to check the organization SCL value. Okay, so I want to give some time for questions, so let me just see if there's enough See if there's any other content that's important to call out. If you're using a hybrid server from home, make sure that you're not using a dynamic IP range, because EOP will block unauthenticated sessions from unauthenticated SMTP communication from dynamic IP ranges. So the Comcast and the Time Warner addresses of the world, they can actually not run hybrid servers at home. They can actually, the users can still open up POP clients and relay off of Office 365, but that's because when configuring the POP clients for SMTP Mailflow, you are configuring your Office 365 credentials to relay off of Exchange Online protection. But your hybrid server at the SMTP layer is not submitting credentials. Instead, credentials are performed through certificate authentication. So in the traditional SMTP sense, it is not authenticated SMTP, but from a hybrid perspective, it is authenticated. So that's why hybrid communication, your hybrid server, when it sends messages across that send connector has no provisions to provide, a single account credential to send mail out to Exchange Online. Instead, the authentication is done via the connector properties. If you are looking at your event logs and or even a non-delivery report that gives a 454 certificate validation failure, check configuration. If your hybrid server is able to chase the certificate revocation list of Exchange Online's SSL or TLS certs. Because if your hybrid server is blocked by some proxy server so that it cannot chase the CRILs, then you may get these certificate issues. Also, if your certificate is expired, you'll get this error as well. And if you do a telnet test between your on-premises environment and the cloud Exchange Online protection servers, you'll notice a series of asterisks. That's because you've got some third-party device that's got PIX firewall enabled. So in this case, that's blocking the start TLS verb. If you have a device that blocks the start TLS verb, then Exchange servers cannot exchange its extended SMTP verbs with each other, and so Hybrid Mailflow also gets broken. And again, the things that get broken when Hybrid Mailflow is not working are all of these various issues. I unfortunately will need to also, if you have a wildcard cert, the hybrid configuration wizard in Exchange 2010 may try to make a best guess effort at the FQDN to put in here when the RFC 2821 communication is established. That certificate name in the EHLO field, if that doesn't match the certificate truly, then Hybrid Mailflow will also break. So there's a lot of things with Hybrid Mailflow that's pretty sensitive that can cause it to break. So you want to make sure that all of these things are working right. Okay, so